well now we're going to take a little bit of a break from our exploration of layouts with CSS Grid. We'll come back to that at a future point. But I really wanted to make a point of having a look at loading another type of image. So we've already loaded the JPEG image, this one, using the IMG, the image element. So we're going to be loading SVG elements today. So SVG stands for Scalable Vector Graphics. And as I'm sure you're aware, vector graphics are the essentially mathematical descriptions of shapes. So they're resolution independent. They're the kind of things that we draw up in Adobe Illustrator. And in fact, working in Illustrator is one of the best ways to make SVGs, that you can hand code them as well. So we'll have a little bit of a look at the code that makes them up also, just for the sake of understanding how they actually work. All right. So there are two ways of putting an SVG image into your page. One of them is to use the image tag, as I said, using essentially the same approach that we used to load this JPEG in. The other approach, which does have certain advantages for us as web designers, is to actually place the code from an SVG directly inside our HTML. The advantage of that is that it allows us to style and even to animate our code using CSS and other techniques. Though the process is a little bit more complicated. All right, let's have a look at placing it in the easy way, then we'll have a quick look at SVG, and that'll be enough for today. All right, so let's come back to our HTML. So we're looking at our web page here, our index.html. All right, and inside the article element, this one, with that class on it, we put in that photo, the image of the laptop, IMG. And we use the source attribute to load in that image from its path, that is the folder that it's in, the images folder, and the actual JPEG image there. We gave it a width of 100%. All right, you could give it a width in pixels. Again, those would be virtual pixels, so the same kind of units that we use in CSS. So not actually necessarily the same size as the actual device pixels physically in the screen that your people are looking at, audience are looking at. So plus we gave it, last time we gave it alt text, okay, very important for accessibility, as we've seen, just a short kind of description there. Very important for accessibility, also for anyone for whom the image fails to load. Well, that is accessibility, isn't it? If you can't see the image, you want something to take its place. All right, so let's make another image tag down here. Say IMG for image, SRC for source. All right, href would have been a better choice actually for this, but SRC it is. I don't make the standards. This is a very old bit of HTML. Okay, so I've typed in the name of the folder, which is images, and Visual Studio Code has given me that / as well, which we definitely need. That / again is telling the computer to look inside that images folder, okay, for whatever we tell it to load in. And in this instance, we're going to load in this one here, love motif .svg. So that's a little image from a client project from a few years ago, and we'll also give it a width. Again, let's make it 100%, so we can see it nice and large. And I'm going to give it some alt text. All right, so I'm going to say it's a stylized love heart on a background of transparent circles, colored circles. That'll do nicely as a description. Again, really good rule of thumb when you're writing out text is just to imagine describing the image to your friend over the phone. All right, you're not going to take a million years. You don't want to write like a sort of fantastic sort of novel describing every last little bit of the image, just enough to give them a really good idea of what the image is of. All right. So let's come back to the browser and have a look. I'm just going to hit Command R to reload. Boom, there it is. Okay. And being resolution independent, this image will look just as good at any size, basically. If we make it small or large, it's going to look still very sharp. All right. That's the beauty of vector graphics. Okay, so that's the easy way to load an SVG into your web page. Certainly the most straightforward, and it's certainly the only one I'm going to cover off in this particular video, though I would like to come back to showing you how to put it into your code at a future time, just because that is fun. There are fun things you can do with it. My idea of nerdy fun anyway. All right, so we have it, using an image tag. So let's have just a quick look at SVG itself. Now, if we come back into Adobe Illustrator, you can see that I've got actually the Adobe Illustrator file here, the original one, and I've just exported that out as an SVG. So it's save as, in fact, is the command. And down here in formats, you choose SVG, choose save, and in this dialog box here, you just want to make sure you have the, you click on the more options one, especially if you're having difficulty with the accuracy of your drawing. You want to increase the number of decimal places. I mean, I found with this one I had to increase it to as much as 4 decimal places to get the kind of level of precision that I needed. It was, without that, it was distorting the shape of my heart a little bit. Okay. But let's have a look at another image. I will just sort of place it into my web page, just for the sake of the exercise. I'm going to place it the same way. Image, source, images. It's this one here, simple shapes.svg. I'm going to place this one in because I want you to see the actual code that makes it up. Give it some alt text. A red square and a blue circle, I think. And an overlapping transparent blue circle. All right. And once again, because the image tag is a self-closing tag, a self-closing element, I like to do this sort of thing, put that little / in the right angle bracket at the end. All right, let's have a look at that in the browser. All right, that looks fine. So there's our SVG. And again, you can see it's super crisp. All right, so let's have a look at the code. I hand coded this one. So this is actually exactly that file, simple shapes.svg. Visual Studio Code is actually, interestingly enough, this little icon for an SVG looks a lot like my drawing. It's a funny sort of coincidence. I wasn't aware of that when I drew it up. But if we look up here, this looks an awful lot like HTML, doesn't it? All right. It looks a lot like HTML. It consists of these sort of these elements, again inside angle brackets, and they have attributes. The attributes look, some of them look familiar, others look different. That's because they're derived from a common source, which is a standard called XML, Extensible Markup Language. And that's actually really the sort of the standard that HTML in a way is derived from or related to. Okay. And you can see in here that these elements, there's a rect for a rectangle. I've given it a position with X and Y coordinates, a width of 50, that means 50 virtual pixels, a height of 50, and I've given it, guess what, a CSS class. And in here, inside these style tags, we have, yes, it is CSS. Now, these properties look a little different. We haven't used a fill property before, but there's a familiar RGBA color value there, with red, green, blue, and a transparency value, an alpha value. That's what the A in RGBA stands for, alpha meaning transparency. Okay, and I can just edit this as well. I can give it a stroke. It's a familiar term from Adobe Illustrator. A stroke of, what will I say? Give it something generous. 5 px, 5 pixels. Unlike down here, actually in the element itself, I need to actually, because this is CSS, I need to provide the units. And, oops, getting that the wrong way around. That's meant to be stroke color. And say RGBA. Well, I'll give this, how about the yellow? And I'll make it a little bit transparent as well. Also give it a stroke width 5px. That looks a little better. All right. So let's save that, come back to the browser, Command R, and you can see that it's given me a stroke value there. Okay, it's a little bit cropped off because, well, because of the bounding box that the element has. It's a bit as though it's gone off screen, but there we have it. We have a transparent line all the way around that. So it's quite easy to sort of write and edit this stuff. It's as easy as editing CSS in your actual regular style sheet. Okay, and look, there's a green line on that circle. All right, so there we go. That's SVG. Oops. Really fantastic image format. Of course, you're meant to be using the illustrations from your Refined Illustrations class. You'll need to, in class, bring that in or in your own time, insert that into your HTML. It should be an animal illustration. We will, for the next project, also be using SVG, but those will be icons. And SVG is fantastic for icons, as I'm sure you can imagine.